The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The Three Down Greencast is brought to you by Lucky Bastard Distillers, Saskatchewan's premier distillery, and by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, brewed in the heart of Regina. Welcome to the Three Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only Sometimes It Is Good to Meet Your Idols podcast. I'm Joel Gasson with John Fraser, as usual. Few things to get to in this episode, as for the second game in a row, second in 3 weeks, technically, the Riders welcomed one of the undisputed best teams in the CFL to Mosaic Stadium and beat them.
Yeah.
A thing we have not said in a very long time.
No.
And certainly changes the course of where this season is at, where it's headed, and it's all, frankly, a whole bunch of possibilities are now on the table, I would say, thanks to that win over Winnipeg. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the fact that this should be Jake Dolegala's team going forward until if and when Trevor Harris returns this season.
Or I don't know. Maybe you keep rolling with them. That's a tease for later.
Maybe. Yes, maybe. And, of course, we'll have to talk about the Pete Robertson stuff that happened during the game as well. But, as you know, the co-host of this fine program, John Fraser, was at the game. And yes, while many of his curses involving watching the Bombers in Saskatchewan have fallen of late, one we can say with certainty continues, as John made the pilgrims to Regina for the first time in a number of years for the Labor Day Classic, which he has yet to see the Bombers win in Regina, and the Bombers lost again, as you all know.
Yeah. 0-8 now in all-time going to the Labor Day Classic, and that dates all the way back. I've been going kind of off and on in some pretty regular stretches since really I moved out west or moved to Saskatoon at least in like 2010. So I've been a fairly regular attendee since I moved to Saskatoon from Lloydminster, but have never seen them win. But in fairness, most of the time they get their asses kicked. And in fairness, most of the time I don't have anything to make me feel way better afterwards.
No, and the trip ultimately became worth it because, number one, it was actually a very good football game.
Incredible game.
And entertaining pretty much from start to finish. Lots of ups and downs, lefts and rights, the whole thing. Like, if everything you would ever want in a football game pretty much happened in that one.
Yep.
And we'll get into all that, obviously. But even though the Bombers lost, it was still ended up being one of the best nights of John's life, as it happened after many conversations, many, dreams at night, I don't know. John has finally met Sergio.
Yeah, I finally had the opportunity to meet face-to-face Sergio Castillo, which, and that was cool. We had him on the podcast, and I love that, and you and I have talked about this privately and on the pod, how when he came on the pod, just a relaxed, laid-back guy, loves what he does, wants to put balls through the uprights, like just a good human being. And him and I have stayed in touch a little bit since then. And as soon as I knew Labor Day was coming up, I reached out and got a chance to meet him after the game, which was really cool because, you text with a guy and you have him on your podcast, but getting to meet him in person, and the fact that it's all because of this dumb little podcast was really cool. Genuinely, like he came, like, I love his energy. I love the luchador mask. Like, you just get those players that you really like, and to be able to have an opportunity to sit and chat with him after a game it was cool. Like, it was just, and he is exactly how he was on our pod, just laid back, chill. We had to wait by the team buses for Sergio because we had texted and he said, hey, just come meet me at the bus. So we stayed behind the fence. There was actually, I was surprised. There was a bunch of Bomber fans there. Now, again, some family, Bennett, Patty Newfield's families were there, but a bunch of guys, saying, hey, we'll get them next week, which was cool. And then, so everybody's walking out with their post-game meal. So I asked Sergio, I said, hey, man, like, what's in the post-game meal? And as he's discussed on this very podcast, normally it's pizza. But he said, by the time we get back, all the pizza joints are closed in Winnipeg. So I go with 2 double cheeseburgers, McNuggets, and a McFlurry. And Lacey and I
eating like an offensive lineman.
Oh, 100%. And Lacey and I love the double cheeseburger at McDonald's. Like by far, like that is their S tier sandwich. The double cheeseburger. It's just it's cheesy enough that you don't taste the processed meat. And he says, yeah, I'll kick back. I'll turn on The Office because he says I'm still pretty wound up. He's like, and I'll just watch some Office. So we talked about our favorite episodes. Lacey even got to everybody. We all had a laugh because, you know, Lacey, my wife, she's a Riders fan and was wearing, she had bought one of those big like chain things. And Sergio kind of said, he's like, listen, revenge in 6 days. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Thanks for coming out. You know, I'm glad we could meet and, you know, kind of end on a high note. And Lacey basically said, oh, well, it was a high note for me. And we all had a laugh. Like, it's just, yeah, like they say never meet your idols, but I can tell you, and this is cool too, because I know some of our listeners, same thing. They've had the chance to meet Sergio. Neely, a friend of mine, he met him in Edmonton. Same thing, down to earth, taking photos with fans. Just awesome guy. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't that disappointed because, as you said, that I don't care if my team loses, but if the game is good football, yeah, put it in my veins. And so I was already kind of like, oh, that's we lost, but meeting Sergio was 10 out of 10. Like, honestly, one of the highlights of my career doing dumb shit like this. And it was cool. So we snapped a cool photo. I threw it up on socials. Just, yeah, celebrate the moment, something to look back on. It was cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always... You obviously can't win them all, and when John's in attendance, the Bombers never win on Labor Day, apparently.
I don't know if I should have mentioned that. I don't know if I'd ever be invited back. I
mean, I am surprised that when you discuss things with Craig Reynolds, shall we say, that maybe that didn't come up.
No. That certainly did. No, actually, you know, it did. The Fraser curse did come up.
Oh, yeah?
And we laughed, and he's like, that's because you've never worn green and white. So I think we were kind of like, okay, well, if I throw on some green and white, maybe it ends. In fairness, the one game I watched at the old stadium, the one in which I was wearing a Riders jersey because it was Thanksgiving weekend, I want to say like 2008 or something. It was cold.
Yeah.
And me, my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, and Lacey snuck in like a combined 80 ounces of alcohol between the four of us. So I'm like, if I show up in a Bomber jersey, they're searching me for sure. I've got like 3 Mickeys in my hoodie. I'm like, okay, they're going to search me for sure. So I threw on a number 4 Kerry Joseph jersey, and they did, in fact, win that game over the Toronto Argonauts, all in which probably the least amount of money I've ever spent, bought a large Coke, and walked out of there zesty. Fun fact. I don't think they can retroactively ban me from the stadium for sneaking in.
Well, they can't ban you from a stadium that doesn't exist anymore, first of all.
That's true. It is not standing. So and
you are banned from Taylor Field, sir. Okay.
But then,
cool.
but then I also feel like 2019 West Final and this year's first game against the Bombers notwithstanding, I feel like they might want to invite me more because...
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it would be a good thing to bring up if you were discussing job opportunities that rest on the Riders winning football games.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so yeah. I'm good luck. But instead they went with that other guy.
Yeah, whatever.
Then
you maybe never would have met Sergio in the way you did. So
that's fair. Or yeah, that's fair.
Because then you would have had to been like all professional and everything, doing your job and stuff, talking to him or something.
But you've seen me in interviews. Was I really the most professional there? I mean, I never walked up.
No, but that was a different era of your career. I think if you were the voice of a professional football team, you would try a little bit harder.
I don't know. Not with interviews. I've always found with interviews to just, you know, you got to kind of relax, especially when you're the voice of a team. Like, you kind of know the guys a little bit. It's a little bit easier. Like, that is one thing I know, like, my time with the Rush, like, doing play-by-play in color, just being around the guys, being a familiar face, you can get such a better quality interview out of these guys.
Sure.
Because the other thing, too, is they know that you're not gonna burn them. You're not there looking for an angle. You're not looking for a guy to slip up and, oh yeah, this guy's out. You know that you're going to kind of just ignore that part and not make a big deal of it, right? So
yeah, but you wouldn't get to fanboy over Sergio.
You're right. I probably wouldn't. I would probably try to and then be told that
unless you could convince the team to, like, say, hey, you gotta have this guy. No offense to Brett Lowther, obviously, but
that's That's fair. That is fair. But I mean and again, he was great too on Labor Day.
Oh yeah.
Like, as a guy that likes kicking and likes special teams, that was unreal.
Oh, the guy's been absolute money since the start of after a little bit of a slow start. He's kind of Rene Paredes in it lately, where it's like the start of the year you kind of like, okay, what's going on with this guy, and then by the middle of the season he just doesn't miss anything. Pretty much, and then is pulling out onside kicks out of nowhere.
That was
and he's pulled that off before. That was like basically the same move he pulled against Calgary, I believe, last year or the year before.
Yes, and the funniest thing was we had just gotten to the game.
Mm-hmm.
And because I ended up parking about 20 minutes away, and my back teeth were floating by the time I got to the stadium, ran in, missed the first flyover, and then we were seated opposite to where the craft beer is. So Lacey and I started making our way around, and I'm looking at the monitors. I'm like, Kate, it's opening kickoff, and I kind of looked back down to make sure I wasn't running to anybody. Then I heard the crowd go wild, and I looked up, and I saw Brett with the football, and I knew exactly what happened. I knew the exact play they had ran and went, shit.
It's funny you mention that because Jamie and I have the green zone. He and Daryl Davis, of course, always show up a few minutes late because their pregame show runs like right up until the top of the hour when the game's supposed to start, right?
Right.
So he's usually a few minutes late. And so he arrives in the press box and he's like, I kind of figured what happened based on the roar of the crowd standing outside the stadium, watching on my phone, waiting for it to catch up on TSN. He's like, it's weird that I do this so much now that I kind of know what's happening based on what the crowd is doing.
100%. Like, I heard the crowd and I thought, maybe like, because sometimes they cut to the crowd shot, like the one guy that had the chest hair bikini.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that guy in the Jumbotron?
I did, yeah. He came up on the Jumbotron. And he came up in the press box before they actually showed him on the Jumbotron. He was like early in the game. Someone spotted him, yeah.
Yeah, he was actually just a few rows down from me, so I had seen it. I'm like, this is amazing. This guy had shaved his chest hair into a bikini looking thing and then gave it the watermelon treatment. Like, it was just... And we're not talking, that wasn't all green. He actually took the two different green and dark green stripes. Like, that guy put a lot of effort in, and I hope he's a listener, because that was awesome. But yeah, I thought maybe somebody did something cool in the Jumbotron, and then it's when I saw Lowther with the ball. Yeah, I knew the exact play. Like, because you're right, he's done that before, and I don't get why more teams don't try the onside like that.
I don't know if there's any time to do it. It's right at the start of the game because you literally could not have more time to recover from it.
Well, 100%. But every time you see an onside kick, it's usually just chaos because they bring in all like nobody's even in the NFL. I don't think anybody's ever expecting the kicker to just dribble it and go for it.
Yeah, in the NFL, it's so different now. Like, the rules on the onside are stupid and pretty much impossible. But
right. Also that. Yeah, in the NFL, your basically only option is to pop it up and hope a guy drops it.
Mm-hmm.
But.
Yeah. Which I believe Hamilton pretty much tried and ended up just skying it right to the guy. But
yeah, the one real dud of a game from the weekend.
And it wasn't even really that bad.
No, so for one, we don't get back from Regina till about, like, we had to stay late to meet up with Sergio. We probably don't get back till like midnight, grab the kids from Grandma and Grandpa's. We're probably not going to bed till like 12:30, and like the next day, and I don't know if it's because I've gone to Labor Day so often, or I just distinctly remember the number of times on Labor Day Monday I have napped, like couch napped through that Toronto-Montreal game. And it's like, they can be great games, but I don't know what it is. It was like back when I was in high school, I remember falling asleep on my futon in my room to this game, because it's like, hey, it's the last day of summer. I might as well nap, because apparently that's what you do, right? I do love a good nap. So, and sure as shit, again this year, I was laying in bed, I was watching it, I was engaged, and then just, all right, I'm going to sleep. So
laying in bed watching it is not a good combination to stay awake.
Fair, but because I'm old and pinched a nerve in my neck last week, I had like the pillows propped in such a way that I wasn't in pain. So it just kind of happened, and then the muscle relaxants kicked in, and I wasn't hungover after Labor Day for literally the first time in my life.
Probably a lot of people were hungover though after the Labor Day Sunday. Of course, the Riders pulled off the big win. We're going to talk about what that means, the play of Jake Dolegala, and look ahead to the Banjo Bowl. But as always, John, for the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, what is in the glass this week?
We're going with a double fist. I got tomorrow off, but as you may have heard the crack early on, in preparation for the Banjo Bowl, delivered to me from Winnipeg, the Trans-Canada Brewing Saskatchewan Dozen. We talked about this off the top, and I have my hands on a case, thanks to Mike Tornopolsky and his mom. It's like everything Trans-Canada makes. It is great. It is a good Pilsner beer, not like that swill with the name on it, but yeah, nice, clean Pilsner beer. Sipping on it right now. Trans-Canada, lots of good stuff. And even though I get a free bottle of it as part of our sponsorship tomorrow, I could not wait. I went and grabbed some Gambit gin on my way home from our friends at the Lucky Bastard Distillers.
I got the bottle of the whiskey today that I'm looking forward to cracking into. Thanks.
I love that you had to use up 2 months of sponsorship to get that. It's
a little pricier than the other stuff, and there isn't much of it left, if any.
Wow!
Until there's another batch coming eventually, but of course it's still aging, so it hasn't been bottled yet. So
right, because it's not like they're just flavoring their vodka with whiskey. It's actual fucking whiskey.
It's actual whiskey, and they believe they've tried it at different points, and they've found the sweet spot to be about, I think Bryce said, about 5 years aging. So
shit.
To get it to where they want it. So yeah, it's not whiskey's not a quick process, if anyone was wondering.
No, and it's funny, I'd forgotten about that. So like that they planned to make whiskey like 5 years ago.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it always blows my mind when you see like stuff are like really from like actual like big whiskey distilleries, and there's stuff that's like 20, 30, 40 years old, and it's like the guy who probably originally distilled this isn't even working for the company anymore.
Oh god, no. He's got his gold watch and he's retired. Like I feel like if you're working at a place like the high-end Scotch places or a high-end whiskey place, that should be worked out in your contract. Like
I'm retiring in 10 years, but I want this thing in 20 years.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. When I retire,
I made this, damn it.
Exactly. Just put some of this in my veins and away we go. But I'm looking forward to hear your review on the whiskey because as much as you know beer, I also think you know whiskey, and we have, as our discussion the other night, we do also have very similar tastes in whiskey. So I'm looking forward to you cracking that.
I do love whiskey, but going a little lighter right now. Picked up some Long Lake Lager from Nokomis Craft Ales.
Oh yeah.
Because they're on sale and they're delicious, and the head brewer at Pile of Bones, Nathan Carey, won't stop posting about it on Beer Lovers of Saskatchewan, so it made me crave it, so I finally was able to purchase some.
That was on my list because you had mentioned it until I had my Saskatchewan Dozen handed to me on Monday with it.
Fair enough.
Also came with a penalty flag and a whistle, and that's not annoying at all when you're tired and have 3 children and you have a whistle around the house.
No, I mean you probably should have hidden that, but anyway.
I was just so excited to open it up. I'm not gonna lie. Like, this is gonna be good, and I can't wait.
Rider fans obviously quite excited right now, thanks to their 6th win of the season, and a big one over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, 32-30 in the Labor Day Classic. Easily a classic football game.
Oh God, yeah.
Considering everything that happened in it. But what a difference a few weeks makes.
Yes.
3 weeks ago, even though we fully expected the Riders to get thrashed by Montreal based on circumstances heading into that game, and they did, they were sitting in sort of a precarious position. I wouldn't say they were in deep trouble, but they weren't exactly fully in control of their own destiny either.
No.
They were very much on the fence, and it was feeling like they could teeter one way or the other fairly easily, and one felt a little more than the other, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, especially too with Mason Fine not looking great and him being, we thought he'd be the guy. I thought this was an 18-wheeler going off a cliff.
Yeah. Here we are 3 weeks later now. One of them, thankfully, a bye, but the Riders have won the 2 games they've played in that time, and did so by playing fairly well against 2 of the league's best teams.
Yes.
And a team that I think teams that had they lost those games, there'll always be fans who are mad and think it's unreasonable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if they play well and lose those games, you're just like, yeah, it's the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the BC Lions. What do you expect?
Right.
Instead, they found ways to win those games. And the BC one, they made a little more interesting than they had to. Winnipeg a little bit at times as well, but that was more of a back and forth affair that I necessarily don't think anyone fully had control of at any point.
No, it was good Zach and bad Zach both appearing in the same game.
And all of a sudden now, they are 2 games clear of Calgary, They were this close to being 3 games clear of Cal.
Oh, yeah, that was almost like, okay, they're going to the playoffs, and then that Bananas Land game on Monday night. That was good.
That was a good game as well. It was a great weekend in the CFL.
It really, like, I can see why viewership's up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what it is? It's funny, okay? And this is my tinfoil hat theory as to why viewership's up.
Mm-hmm.
The Sickos Committee.
Maybe.
I mean, like, they say that the basically our demographic's up. And I'm pretty sure if you take college football fans and fans of chaos football and make it event, or like chaos football and the 23 to 54 male demo, the Venn diagram's a circle.
Yeah.
So I think the Sickos have had something to do with this. I'm saying
it's possible. It's quite possible.
More love for the Sickos Committee. But
anyway, yeah. 2 up on Calgary. They get to play head-to-head and again in about a month and a half. And as long as things go, I would say, fine. Like, I don't expect them to run the table or anything down the stretch here or anything like that. They control their own destiny at this point. And yes. I'm not willing to say at this point that they are locked into 3rd place in the West by any stretch of the imagination, because, as we saw, in 3 weeks, a lot can change.
Yes.
But as long as they stay the course, because after next week, realistically, it could be 1 game up on Calgary if the Riders lose the Banjo Bowl, which is quite likely. And if the Elks lose the matchup, the Labor Day rematch to Calgary, which is also quite likely, then, yeah, it'll go back down to 1 game, which is maybe fair given sort of, I think those teams are still fairly even.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, they still control their own destiny, and I think they've sort of weathered past that weird stage where everyone was talking about potentially an East team crossing over. It's looking like if there's going to be a crossover, and it feels like there might be now, but once again, it's the West going East. And so
Shocker.
With that in mind, I think I am fairly confident that the Saskatchewan Roughriders should make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And as you said, what a difference 3 weeks makes, and what a difference things are from after when Trevor Harris went down, right? I thought, in watching Mason Fine and the way the team responded with him, I'm like, oh God, this is going to be another, like, I thought because again, pull the curtain back, more people listen when they lose than when they win to this right here podcast. So I thought, great, we're going to set a new record for listens in a year. They're going to be dog shit. Away we go. And then Mason Fine gets hurt, which might be the best blessing in disguise injury since Drew Bledsoe went down and Tom Brady took over.
It's close, yeah.
I mean, I'm not calling Jake Dolegala Tom Brady, but...
You heard it here first. Another one of John's perfect quarterback takes. The quarterback whisperer is back.
Wouldn't you laugh if Dolegala's in, like, starting for my Minnesota Vikings in 5 years now and, like, tearing it up?
Can't be worse than Kirk Cousins.
That would be fun. But, well, I think Dolegala, was he in New England when Brady was still there?
I don't remember.
I got to look this up. But again, what a change 3 weeks makes, and what a change in, like, and you and I kind of touched on it, even when Dolegala came into that dog shit game against Montreal that we all knew they were losing.
Yeah.
How he just seemed to make the right decision and small window throws and stuff like that. And did he have a perfect Labor Day? Absolutely not. But the thing that impressed me the most was, he looks, especially live, you see him throw a deep ball, it's effortless.
Mm-hmm.
Like
and this is something that we talked about in the press box, and as Daryl Davis of the Leader Post, Star Phoenix, and the Green Zone brought it up, because of his height, he just throws it higher.
Yeah.
So if you're going up, so that's why there's been, the increase in the sort of the high pointing or the 50-50 balls or whatever buzz term you want to use for them, where the receivers have gone up and make plays for him. And the receivers didn't really make the plays for him in that game, which I think hurt him a little bit. But so that maybe made him look like he missed a few passes, which he did. But because his ball is so much higher and he's able to throw over guys, that ball doesn't end up picked. It just ends up in the 10th row.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, with a guy like that has a big arm, and you see it quite often in professional football, that a guy's got, like, he's put so little effort into throwing such a good deep ball that he gets that moment of adrenaline, this guy's open, and just doesn't know how to control it yet. Right? Like, in a big moment like that, to overthrow guys, and I think that on top of his height, but that also has something to do with, you feel your heart race just that last second before you release the ball, knowing somebody's open. And controlling that is something he's going to get in experiences because, I mean, let's face it, the atmosphere at Labor Day is like a playoff game.
Yep. It was loud there. Like that was there's been a lot of talk over the years about loud fan bases here in Winnipeg and the whole thing. That game on Sunday was legitimately loud.
According to my Apple Watch, 112 decibels in section 138. Like, and that is the loudest. I've been to New Mosaic for a handful of games because that facility is just like, I would watch anybody play there. Like, it's just a great facility to watch football. So, so I've been to a handful of games there and nothing ever that loud. Dolegala, to answer my own question, joined the New England Patriots in 2020. Brady left after the 2019 season, so he did not. So even though he is the next Tom Brady, he did not play with Tom Brady.
Well, I mean, that's fair. Tom Brady would not train his own protege. That doesn't seem like Tom Brady.
No, that absolutely doesn't. So that's why he's having all this success. Is maybe he just left like his deflated footballs and notebooks around or something.
Apparently, yes. And I think this is sort of the biggest reason, because we talked about this last week. There was the direct comparison to be made instantly between Jake Dolegala and Mason Fine, because both of their first two starts this year, in this case Jake Dolegala's first career start, were against two of the three best teams in the league. Both played their first against BC, and then they played, Mason Fine obviously played Toronto, and Dolegala played Winnipeg. And I think it's pretty clear who did better in that sort of 4-game stretch.
Yeah.
It would be the guy who's thrown for 565 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions.
Not the guy that in his last 4 games before getting hurt, 4 picks, 1 touchdown. A lot of yards, but there was a lot of garbage time in those.
And it's just different. You feel it out there. He can just make a lot more throws than Mason Fine can't. I fully believe that the bump is coming, as they do for all young quarterbacks at different times throughout the year. When they start getting this, teams are going to figure out how to get to this guy, how to defend him, and do all of that is going to come. So eventually we find out, as we do with all quarterbacks, they're actually good when they can adjust to the adjustment. So we don't know that part about Jake Dolegala just yet. But we do know is he is, I would say, their best backup quarterback since Drew Willie.
Yes.
Not that that's a very high bar to clear, but I mean, not including Kevin Glenn, but he was the backup for so short before Darian Durant blew himself up that he had to go be the starter anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So that aside, Kevin Glenn was technically the best backup quarterback. He just never really had to be the backup quarterback. And so with that in mind, I don't think there's any question now, and I don't know if Craig Dickinson has or will be asked this question, but if Mason Fine comes back from his knee injury or leg injury or whatever it is, he just has to be on the bench now. And I know there are people out there who believe you don't lose your job to injury. It's baloney. When it's this clear and when it's about winning football games, you keep the guy in there who's winning football games. And I don't think you can turn back to Mason Fine at this point, not unless Jake really falls off the cliff hard.
Well, and Jake, based on what we've seen, I mean, he's going to be in tough at the Badger Bowl.
Yes. And I would almost put that game aside as a separate issue for this sort of conversation.
Right.
Because more often than not, for the Banjo Bowl, the way that goes for the Riders, they kind of find a way to win, which they've done a few times, or they just get the absolute piss kicked out of them.
Well, well, that's it. And you and I were texting or talking about this earlier, that it's like the Riders typically win the Labor Day Classic because, something chaotic happens. That's just kind of how history goes. But the Banjo Bowl is typically where your best team emerges, right? I was looking this up before the game or before the podcast. I guess got to get my game face on. Actually, the series all-time of the Banjo Bowl is only 11-7 for the Bombers. And as you and I were discussing in the preamble, that really reflects that the Riders were really good for the opening few years of the Banjo Bowl, and now the Bombers have been really good for the last 5 years. The Riders have only won once since 2015. Fun fact, Zach Collaros starting quarterback for the Riders in that one against Matt Nichols. So, that seems to be the game that the better team wins, and we can all sit here and say that Winnipeg is the better team, but it goes back to the point you make, and we always talk about, you always talk about process over results. And even if, the Riders lose this Banjo Bowl, which I think
I would say is at least a 60-40 chance.
Right. I would agree with that. I'm just so nervous of Bad Zach showing up again. Normally I'd be on here, you're gonna lose the bad.
Yeah, but that defense feeds off that crowd. So Willie or Big Hill or Jeff Coder, someone's gonna do something big early and get that thing going like normal.
Well, and it's gonna be sold out, and then bad Drew or Bad Zach can show up, and it'll just be he'll keep it close because, yeah. Anyways, that is a discussion for another day, Joel Gasson, that I might actually have gotten something right. But even if Dolegala, I cannot think and I don't, when you see a quarterback and you see a guy play, you start thinking, okay, a bad game for this guy is going to be 200-300 yards with a couple picks.
Yeah.
No touchdowns. You don't have like Mason Fine, and watching him didn't once seem to have, the support of his coaches, the way the playbook was limited, the support of his teammates. He didn't really have the support of anybody that you could see that guy going 10 for 30 for 120 yards and 4 picks, right? Basically putting up Zach Collaros in a playoff game numbers. I don't think that's there with Jake, because even the misses he makes, the mistakes he makes are not typically putting his team in danger. And I really noticed this live and being sober at the Banjo Bowl or the Labor Day Classic. God knows I've never been to a Banjo Bowl sober. That when he was overthrowing, when he was maybe underthrowing, when he was at least going to the right guy. The right decisions were being made, and maybe it just wasn't being executed because he was under pressure or something like that. But you didn't see him throw up prayers in a double coverage. You didn't see him throw to the wrong side of a receiver, right? He's missing on the pro side, and right.
Russ Howard.
There you go. Our curling fans will love that one. That's right. Got it. Very hard. But I don't know. I do see the Riders losing the Banjo Bowl, but I don't see Jake Dolegala being the reason. I see an amped up Winnipeg crowd and Sergio going 7 for 7.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. And you're right. We talk about process over results, and I think, if by some way Jake Dolegala shows up, throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, and the Riders beat the absolute piss out of the Bombers, then we're having some kind of conversation next week about where this team is headed.
Yeah, 100%. Because let's face it, because things are tighter in the West Division. Yeah. This is going to sound bananas land. But they're not out of it for first.
No, technically not. They're just as in far striking range of at least hosting a playoff game as they are being out of the playoffs, basically.
Right, but you've got Winnipeg one more time. You got BC one more time, with some teams mixed in there that aren't quite as good, and probably a Toronto Argonauts team in the last week of the regular season. That's
Toronto will have everything locked up in 2 weeks. So
that's what I mean. You're gonna be facing an Argos team that's basically playing an exhibition roster for most of that game, right? So. Crazier things have happened, but it just...
By no means are we sitting here saying that we think the Riders are going to be at that point, but a win next week and the door opens a little bit is basically what we're saying here.
And it seems like in terms of 3 weeks ago, we were thinking that this is a team looking at the stretch moving into it. When Mason Fine wasn't looking great, before Dolegala came in, I was looking at the schedule and going, there's a chance they might only get 2 more wins. Now I look at the schedule after the last couple of weeks and go, there's a chance they may only get 2 more losses the rest of the way, right? It's amazing, and especially and just like they say, you could call hockey goalie, you can call the football quarterback.
Yep.
Even though the guy definitely looks like an accountant. And I got to give my wife credit for this one. Every time
she has experience with accountants, so.
She does. She works at a credit union, right? So she knows the look, and she's like, yeah, that guy looks like he works Monday to Friday at the credit union and then goes and chucks bombs on the weekend for the Riders.
Isn't Jacques Cartier an accountant?
I think he is.
Is Jacques Cartier Jake Dolegala?
whoa now.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, I mean, he's all putting on his ruse, not liking the writers and whatever, but I mean...
Right, exactly. It's just, that's the ultimate distraction.
Exactly.
Now that would be the way to run a burner account. Some hiding it behind it, not dragging your nuts as to who you are, revealing that to Greg on Sports or Greg on whatever out of his mom's basement, and basically showing where to get your info from. But I digress again.
Mm-hmm. What we do know about the Banjo Bowl is the riders, unless it's Tuesday, September 5th, so in the next 2 days we may learn otherwise. Unless Pete Robertson,
we're done recording, he's going to appeal it.
Yeah, unless Pete Robertson, I would say foolishly, appeals his suspension, he won't be playing in the Banjo Bowl. And I would say most people who are level-headed would agree that this is the right decision by the league after the fact. There is no question in my mind, before anyone accuses otherwise, there is absolutely no question in my mind that yes, he should have been ejected from that game.
Yes.
I know there's been a lot of conversation about how the refs on the field initially missed the call. I mean, it happened like 10 seconds after the play. I'm fairly certain the refs, no one was looking in that direction at that point.
No.
It even took TSN a good amount of time to, I think, define the camera angle to show what exactly happened, because watching the game, all of us in the press box were like, what? Why is there a flag? What happened here? So then we were thinking, okay, he's got to challenge us for like an embellishment or something, right? Because we saw the angle and like Zach's is standing around for a bit. So it's like, okay, what exactly happened here? So obviously, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that, yeah, no one on the field saw it, because maybe only Zach Collaros and Pete Robertson frankly saw it. And apparently maybe Mika Johnson, because he got in his face.
Yeah.
Which is good. But
which I love before you close out your point there, Gas. Look at the way the team reacted to Robertson here, and look at the way that they reacted to Garrett Marino.
Yeah.
That shows to me this is a very different team. When Mika Johnson, he sees the headbutt, and he's the first guy to get pissed off. Mm-hmm. And he's not pissed off at Zach. He's pissed off at Robertson.
Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, that was a pivotal moment in the game. They had stopped the Bombers, who were likely going to kick a relatively cowardly field goal to tie the game. And instead, they get a first down and score a touchdown and take the lead. And in theory, should have gone on to win from that point.
Right.
But anyway, because of the circumstance that I can see how it got missed on the field. Luckily, the control center called the flag. Why he wasn't ejected, I don't know. That should be a pretty obvious ejection. Because it's Zach Collaros, but because you just headbutted a guy after the play. This wasn't a football play gone wrong. This was just a stupid moment.
I wonder, though, if that's not something that the command center can call.
I don't know.
That because obviously somebody at the command center saw it, because if you've ever officiated football or next time you're watching a game, take a look at the refs when the play's done. When the play's done, and there was talking and there was BS between almost every play. It almost looked like a hockey scrum to some degree, which is great. That's what teams do. You get heated, you're in the moment. But watch, everybody, you're counting the players coming on the field. You're spotting the ball. You're moving all these things around, and you're not really watching the play once it's dead, especially in football, because you just don't see shit like that, right? So, there's no blame at all to me on the officials missing that. And I just wonder, I know, and I haven't ref for many years, but I know, when you were linesmaning, you could do certain things, but you couldn't eject a guy from a game. So I almost wonder if that's a thing with the command center. If the command center, because you got to think, somebody at the command center, it's rare it's that cut and dry.
Yeah.
Right. So I imagine, and it'd be nice to see if there was something in the rules, if we had access to a rule book that said the command center can call a 15-yard but can't eject a guy, which, I could see there being some of that, because all of a sudden you got someone in the headset. If you're on the field, you haven't seen anything. You get somebody back in Toronto saying, hey, you got to eject, 45. I could see how that wouldn't go over, right? Just as a guy that's officiated games. So I wonder if that's the reason why. But I agree with you. Should have been thrown out. I also agree. I know the guys at Piffle said that maybe he should have got more games, but I think one is fair. Yeah. I think one. I mean, the guy is not a repeat offender.
No.
From what I understand, he was remorseful Like, he just knew he got heated. His teammates, this wasn't, obviously the intent was there to injure, you're headbutting a guy, but it's not like a Garrett Marino where he's a repeat offender, comes out, cheers it, lives it off. Like, he kind of sulked off the field while getting yelled at by his own team, right? So I think a game is fair, but, I mean, it definitely puts him on the shit list now.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I don't... Given the CFL's history with suspensions, one game feels about right to me, and I think it's the right length to make sure that he doesn't appeal, where it's basically, I think even if Robertson wants to appeal, I hope the team is in his ear saying, don't do it. Like, we're not going to tell you can't, because you're within your rights to do it, but it's better if you just make this go away and sit out the game.
Well, and I think that's why the league was so quick with it, too.
Yeah.
I think they're just like, hey, we want this to go away. Not that Canada has any sports talk shows left, since the departure of Tim being put on Sportsnet Central, wherever the hell he's doing now, and other daily sports talk shows on obscure TV networks becoming very U.S. focused. There's not a lot of noise around Canada anymore, but to do it on Labor Day Monday and basically boom, it's done. We've addressed it. The only people talking about the CFL today is our rights holder, because God knows there's nobody working at a TV or radio station in Canada on Labor Day. So I like the way it was handled, and I hope he doesn't appeal. Let's just make it go away, sit out your one game. You know you did wrong. Your teammates know you did wrong. And I think by not appealing it, he would also send the message that he knows he was wrong.
Yeah.
And just take your lumps, sit down, take the weekend off, go away.
Yeah. I think that'd be the best thing to do, and then, yeah, it's the right thing to do. And I mean, there is an angle of annoying the Bombers and wanting you to show up in that game, because based on the way the Bombers handled that after the game, even though it just about won them the game, was something. I know a lot of them were just answering questions, but I mean, I don't really care what Wade Miller thinks about this, to be honest. And then we're getting into it. There was a lot of conversation from Winnipeg's side of this, it was just, I was like, this is really what you guys are focused on right now? Right. Like, I get it's bad, and it's like you're answering questions, and it's something that you should be asked about, but it felt like it was the only thing that happened in that football game, and for some reason, and somehow was why they lost. I don't know.
But it's because nobody in Winnipeg wants to talk about bad Zach. Nobody in Winnipeg wants to talk bad Zach. Like, you look at every game that he plays like dog water, nobody talks about it. Mm-hmm. Right? I
remember at Grey Cup last year, I brought it up to the Dunk and Hodge, and they kind of looked at me, and they looked at the numbers, and they're like, oh yeah, you're right. He hasn't really been that good. I'm like, no. During that playoff stretch. And same with the playoff stretches that they won. I wouldn't say they won because of him.
No, we talked about this on this very podcast.
Yep.
I actually brought up numbers to say that he's not that good. Like, it's just everybody around him is so good, and he's just at a time right now that outside of Chad Kelly, I think every other team probably takes Zach Collaros right now as their starting quarterback. Maybe VA, but like, bad Zach is there, and nobody wants to talk about it, and it surprises me. Maybe not the Winnipeg traveling media, but that nobody in Winnipeg has really brought this up. Like Derek Taylor's not going to bring it up. He's a play-by-play voice of the team. The Ed Tates that work for the team aren't going to bring this up. The Paul Friesens that are paid to go and they're traveling with the team, they're not going to bring it up, right? Like I think Darren Bombing's brought it up before, but again, he's got to tread pretty carefully, right? Because he's doing his own thing. He can't have his access taken away. But that's the thing. That's what Winnipeg's focusing on. They're focusing on the headbutt, not the fact that their quarterback only completed 5 passes for 3 quarters.
Yeah, but I mean, don't you dare ever say anything about it on social media. You'll be harassed endlessly for hours for some reason.
Oh, I hate, of all the things I'm almost right on, it's that the starting quarterback of my favorite team that's led them to 2 Grey Cup championships is not very good.